The day they laughed at me, I still had flour on my hands. That was the part that mattered. Not the laughter, not the looks, not even the way they turned their backs like I had already disappeared. It was the flour, because it meant I still had something. My name is Eliza Hart, and before I lost everything, I was a baker, not an important one, not the kind with a storefront or a name painted on a window, just a woman who knew how to make dough rise, how to turn heat and time into something people depended on without ever thinking about it. Until they did. The bakery I worked in wasn't mine. It belonged to Mr. Kettering. And when the debt collectors came through town that autumn, they didn't just take land. They took businesses. They took anything that owed more than it could pay. And the bakery owed more than it could survive. You can stay until the end of the week, Kettering told me, his voice tired, his hands shaking slightly as he counted what little was left. After that, it's done. I nodded, because there wasn't anything else to do. The oven stayed warm for 3 more days. I baked everything we had left, every ounce of flour, every handful of grain, because letting it sit would have been worse. On the last day, I baked bread no one paid for. I set it on the counter, watched people take it. Some thanked me, most didn't, but that wasn't the point. The point was, for a moment, I was still a baker. Then the doors closed, and I wasn't anything at all. By nightfall, I was out. No home, no work, no place in the town that had depended on me only days before. People avoided looking at me, not out of cruelty, but because it was easier. Easier to pretend I had already gone somewhere else. Somewhere that wasn't their problem. But I hadn't gone anywhere. I was still there, still breathing, still carrying the only thing I had left. Knowledge. I didn't leave the valley. I couldn't. Not with winter coming. Not with nowhere to go. So I went where no one else did. The cliffs at the edge of town. They rose sharp and uneven, forming a natural barrier that most people never bothered to explore. Too steep, too cold, too useless. That word again. Useless. I climbed them slowly, carefully, testing each step. The wind was stronger up there, colder. But as I moved higher, I noticed something else. Openings. Small at first, then larger. Natural breaks in the rock. Not deep enough to call caves, but enough to consider. I kept climbing, because I wasn't looking for shelter the way most people did. I was looking for something else, something specific. By late afternoon, I found it. A cave set slightly back into the rock face. Wide enough to stand in, deep enough to block the wind. Dry? That part mattered most. The ground inside was solid, not damp, not crumbling. The air was still, and the ceiling curved in a way that held space, held heat. I stepped inside and stood there for a long moment, listening. Because caves have a way of telling you things. About how they breathe, how they hold air, how they handle sound. This one was quiet, steady, balanced. It wasn't a home. Not yet. But it could be something. Something more. The first night inside it, I didn't sleep much. The cold still found its way in. The ground pulled heat away from my body. And without a proper fire, it was barely better than being outside. But it was enough to think. And thinking was what I needed most. Because I wasn't trying to build a home. I was trying to rebuild something else entirely. The idea came before I allowed myself to believe it. Because it sounded impossible. Ridiculous. Even to me. A bakery? I said it out loud once. The word echoed softly against the stone. Felt wrong. Not a place. Because bakeries belonged in towns. With doors. With windows. With customers walking in and out. Not in caves. Not hidden. Not forgotten. But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. Not the way it used to, but in a different way, a more necessary way. Bread wasn't a luxury, not in winter, not when supplies ran low, not when roads closed and shipments stopped. Bread was survival, and survival didn't care where it came from. The next morning, I started building. Not walls, not furniture, an oven. That was the heart of everything. Without it, there was no bakery. Without it, there was nothing. I used stone from the cave itself. Loose pieces, broken fragments, anything that could hold heat. I stacked them carefully, layer by layer, forming a dome, leaving a small opening at the front, a space to feed wood, to control flame, to trap heat inside. It took days, because it had to be right. Too loose, and it would collapse. Too tight, and it wouldn't breathe. By the end of the week, I had something. Rough, uneven, but functional. The first fire I built inside it was small, careful, testing. The smoke curled upward, following the natural curve of the cave's ceiling before slipping out through a narrow crack near the top. Not perfect, But enough. The heat stayed. That was what mattered. It stayed. The next problem was flour. I didn't have any. Not anymore. But I knew where to find it. Not in sacks. Not in stores. But in pieces. Leftovers. The things people didn't think about. I went back to the town carefully. Not openly. Not the way I used to. I stayed on the edges. Watched. Waited. And gathered what I could. Spilled grain from broken barrels. Small amounts traded for labor. Even a handful from someone who still remembered the bread I had given away. It wasn't much. But it was enough to start. The first loaf I baked in that cave wasn't good. It was uneven. Dense. Not fully risen. But it was bread. Real. Warm. Alive. I held it in my hands and felt something I hadn't felt since the bakery closed. Purpose. I didn't bring it to town. Not yet. Because I knew how it would look. A woman cast out. Living in a cave. Trying to sell bread. They would laugh. They already had. So I waited. Baked more. Improved the oven. Learned how the cave held heat. How the stone absorbed and released it. How long it took for the temperature to settle. Each loaf got better. Lighter. Stronger. More consistent. By the time the first real cold set in, I was ready. Not with the shop. Not with the sign. But with something else. A system. A way to produce what people would soon need. Whether they believed it or not. The first storm came early. Cutting off the road before anyone expected it. Supplies didn't arrive. Flour ran low. Then out. People started to notice. At first, it was quiet. A question here. A concern there. Then louder. What are we supposed to do for bread? Another shipment will come. It didn't last time. The uncertainty spread quickly. Because people rely on what they think will always be there. Until it isn't. That was when I made the decision. Not to hide anymore. But not to return either. Something in between. I baked that morning. More than I had before. Every bit of flour I had. Every piece of fuel I could spare. Then I wrapped the loaves carefully. And walked down toward the edge of town. Not into it. Just close enough. I set the bread on a flat rock near the main path. Where people would see it. But not see me. And then I waited. Because this wasn't about proving anything. Not yet. It was about letting them discover something they didn't expect. Something they thought was gone. And when they found it, when they realized bread still existed, the questions would come. Not about the bread itself, but about where it came from. And that would lead them to me. To the cave. To the thing they had laughed at. And to something they would soon understand. They couldn't live without. The first loaf disappeared before I saw who took it. One moment it was there, wrapped in cloth, still warm from the oven. The next, gone. Only a few crumbs left behind on the rock. I didn't move, didn't step forward, because this wasn't about being seen yet. It was about being noticed. The second day, I left 2 loaves. This time, I stayed farther back, hidden behind a line of low brush along the ridge. Close enough to watch, far enough not to be. A woman found them first. Mrs. Dalloway. I recognized her by the way she walked. Careful, deliberate, like she was always thinking 2 steps ahead. She stopped, looked around, then slowly reached down and touched one of the loaves. Her hand lingered there for a moment, feeling the warmth, testing if it was real. "It's fresh," she murmured. A man approached behind her. "Where'd that come from?" She shook her head. "I don't know." He picked one up, turned it over. No mark, no sign. They stood there longer than necessary. Because the bread wasn't the mystery. The fact that it existed was. By the 3rd day, they were waiting for it. 3 people stood near the rock before I even arrived. Talking quietly. Watching. I placed the bread earlier that morning and stepped back into the shadows again. This time, they didn't hesitate. They took it quickly. But they didn't leave. "Someone's making this," one of them said. "Has to be. But who? And where?" That question carried. Spread. Because in a town running out of supplies, the source mattered more than the product. By the end of the week, the entire valley knew. Bread had returned. But no one knew how. Or where from. Turner came on the 7th day. He didn't stand with the others. Didn't ask questions out loud. He just watched. Studied. The ground. The rock. The path. Looking for something that didn't fit. Something that shouldn't be there. And eventually, he found it. Not the cave. Not directly. But the sign. A faint trail. Not obvious. Not clear. But enough. He followed it. Slowly. Carefully. Up toward the cliffs. I saw him before he saw me. Because I had learned how to watch without being seen. He moved with purpose. Not guessing anymore. Knowing. And for the first time since I started, I stepped out. Not hiding. Not waiting. just standing there. He stopped when he saw me. Not surprised. Just quiet. I thought it might be you, he said. I didn't respond. Because there wasn't anything to confirm. He looked past me, toward the cave, then back at me. You built this. Yes. He took a step closer. Slow. Measured. Red's coming from a cave, he said. Looks that way. He let out a breath. Half disbelief. Half something else. How? I turned and gestured inside. Come see. He hesitated only a moment. Then followed. The shift hit him the same way it had hit me. The stillness. The contained air. The warmth that didn't escape. His eyes moved across the oven. The stacked wood. The small space that somehow held everything it needed. You figured out how to bake out here, he said. Yes. When there's no flour left in town. I found enough. For now. He nodded slowly. Then looked at the oven again. At the structure. The way it held heat. The way it worked with the cave instead of against it. This isn't just baking, he said. No. It's something else. I didn't argue. Because he was right. It wasn't a bakery the way people understood it. It was a system. A way to turn almost nothing into something necessary. He turned back toward me. They need this. I know. And they're going to come looking. I know. Silence settled between us. Then he said the thing I had already been thinking. You can't stay hidden anymore. I looked at the entrance. At the ridge beyond. At the valley below. I wasn't planning to. The next day, I didn't leave the bread on the rock. Instead, I waited. Inside the cave. With the oven warm. With the bread ready. And when they came, I didn't hide. At first, it was just a few. The same ones who had been watching the rock. They climbed carefully. Uncertain. Expecting something strange. They weren't wrong. When they reached the cave, they stopped. Because this wasn't what they expected. Not a storefront. Not a proper bakery. Just stone. Fire. And me. You've been making it here, one of them asked. Yes. All this time. Yes. They looked around. Taking it in. Trying to understand. Trying to fit it into something familiar. But they couldn't. Because it wasn't familiar. It was different. And different was what they needed now. Word spread faster after that. Not as a mystery anymore. But as a fact. There's a baker in the cliffs. She's making bread in a cave. It's real. They've seen it. More people came. Not all at once. But enough. Bringing what they could. Grain. Salt. Anything they were willing to trade. Not because they had plenty. But because they understood something now. Bread mattered. And I could make it. The cave changed. Not physically. But in purpose. It wasn't just mine anymore. It had become something else. A place people depended on. Not out of charity. Not out of kindness. But because it worked. Because it produced something they couldn't get anywhere else. Winter deepened. The cold grew harsher. But the bread didn't stop. The oven held. The system held. And the town held. Because of it. One evening, as the fire settled low and the last batch cooled on the stone, Turner stood near the entrance, looking out over the valley. You know what the strange part is? He said. What? They laughed when you left. I nodded. They thought you were finished. I looked at the bread. At the place I had built from nothing. They weren't wrong. I said. I was. He glanced back at me. Doesn't look that way now. I shook my head slightly. They thought I lost everything. And you didn't. I did. I paused. Then added. I just built something they couldn't take. He nodded slowly, looking back out at the valley, at the town that now depended on something it had once ignored. They'll remember this, he said. Maybe. They will, he replied. Because when everything else ran out. He looked back at the cave, at the oven, at the quiet, steady fire. This didn't. And that was the truth of it. The thing they laughed at, the thing they didn't understand, had become the one thing that lasted.